Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Four Stars Podcast press conference to preview the IRA. We have some great coaches, Olympic champions on this press conference today. So I'm excited to have you all here. I am joined with Lauren O'Connor. She's here today to help us out. So Lauren will take it off here. She will ask you guys all a question. If you could answer that, that'd be great. I will go one by one, and then she'll explain to you the rest of the directions after that.
Hi, good morning. I think we can start with just like a quick statement from each coach about like their season so far and going into this race this weekend. If you want to first hear from Cornell, that'd be great.
Nothing like getting put on the spot, being the first guy. I hadn't really thought this out a whole lot, so there you go. We're coming off the sprints where I thought we did a pretty solid job, and we weren't as fast as we want to be, but we have a couple things that we were able to change up. So we're looking a little more positive at the IRA, thinking, we got to race really hard and get ourselves into that top 12 to start with, and see where we go from there. But we're pretty excited for it. We had a really good camp, so we'll see.
Thank you. We can go to Dartmouth now.
Yeah, same thing. Todd, unprepared for this, but yeah, it's been a solid season so far. I think a lot of progress throughout the spring. I think we put our best race out there in the heat at sprints in the varsity 8, came up 4/100ths of a second short of the final. And so, a little bit more time in that lineup. And I think there's been some improvement there, and hopefully we can take another step forward this week in New Jersey. Definitely a strength of our program has been the depth this year. And we're continuing to lean on that and looking forward to seeing how our 2V and 3V do as well. So yeah, looking forward to later this week.
Thank you, Coach. We can hear from Drexel.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a good season so far. Definitely a deep team with a lot of veteran leadership on it, but also some good youthful energy coming out of the freshman class. So coming off a little bit of a long layoff here from Dadvale's, but yeah, looking forward to the IRA and again putting our best foot forward and best race out there.
Thank you. And lastly, we can hear from Penn.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, it's been every week we've gotten a little bit better, and that's been our goal every week. And certainly we still need to improve. So we're hopeful that that we've found some more speed and that we can display it this weekend at the IRA across the entirety of the team. So fingers crossed.
Thank you. Now we can start with questions. If anyone, whoever has them, they can just raise your hand. Oh, I see one. Fraser, you can start with your questions and you just address the coach and say who you are and where you are from.
Fraser Vinnis, Junior Wing News from the UK. Coach Weaver, your program's built an awful lot of speed throughout the season, probably most obviously through your 4 races against Salle, constantly improving through the lot of them. How have you seen what do you put down that improvement through the year too?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Fraser. Good question. But yeah, I think kind of the backbone of the program has been what Coach Savell has done before my time here. This is my first year as head coach. So I think a lot of it could have been on me, just getting to know the guys and getting to know how they race well and kind of sorting through some lineups. And like I said, it's a pretty deep team this year with a lot of veteran leadership. I think we have 18 guys that are going to be graduating next year. So, with that, there's a lot of guys that could have rode in the 1V. So a lot of guys earned their chance. So with that, give them the opportunity that they earned. So for us, it was really about kind of sorting out the best lineup to click together. And, once we've kind of feel like we had that, it was about improving our race plan week in and week out and, kind of peaking towards the end of the season for the races that matter and kind of just using March and April stepping stones to get where we want to be, now the end of May, early June.
Looking a little bit beyond IRAs, are any of you going to be making the trip across the Atlantic this summer for the Henley Royal Regatta?
Just for recruiting purposes.
Our women's team will be there, so be on the lookout for them.
Yeah, I'll be over there recruiting as well. I'm also going to be coaching a U.S. rowing boat over there, so that'll be a fun challenge as we wrap up the season. Yeah, we're just thinking about this weekend, just trying to go as fast as we can this weekend.
And I think Cornell will have a lightweight boat, I believe, and some of our the heavyweight staff will be there recruiting.
Thank you. So Coach Monte, how do you view the steps in order to bridge that gap and to be competing for the medal rostrum?
Yeah, well, we know we have to get faster, right? I think that was evident at the Eastern Sprints, and certainly that's been our theme for the entirety of the spring. We're fortunate that we get to race some of the best teams week in and week out. So that's a measuring stick every time we get to go out there. And this lineup has been together for a while. And they're certainly improving each time we go out there, and they know that it's going to take everything that they've got, their absolute best, if we're going to be even in the conversation to compete for medals at the IRA. So we're excited about that challenge for sure. But we're just taking it one day at a time.
I guess my main question here is during the regular season, there's all these cup races that happen. They're pretty much dual races. And we also saw the IRA Sarasota Invitational. That was a great race to see. Are we going to have any more of those larger races throughout the season, the regular season, next year? Is that in the works, or is this going to be sticking to the cup and dual races throughout the season?
I'll take a first shot at that. I would like to see more of those, and I'd like to participate in more of those. I think it's really productive preparation for sprints and IRAs to have those multiple race weekends. I think it also frees your time up elsewhere in the springtime when you have an open weekend and can train through that week and reselect and have a little bit more flexibility. I feel like it's always productive. So I like those weekends. We do the Lake Maury invite for that reason. I know Todd and Al get together up in Cornell or wherever for the Madeira Cup. I think you guys probably agree that that's really productive for you. So I think everyone's sort of going in that direction. The challenge is sort of unpacking that cup schedule and honoring those cup races. And so everyone I seem to talk to around the league is of similar mindset. It's just figuring out how to make it work and again honor all of those cup races. So
our last weekend, regular season weekend, was the Madeira Cup, where we also had Holy Cross and Oregon State join us along with Cornell, and that's been really fun to get 3 rips down the race course. So if we can figure out a way, as Wyatt touched on, to honor those cup races, I think we're all for it.
I think the flip side of it too, Hudson, kind of alluded to it, or it might have been you, Fraser, like racing LaSalle 4 times in 1 year. I mean, for us, getting other teams on the schedule is always important. I think, Todd and I have had some conversations about potentially racing next year. So super, super grateful for that. And yeah, I think the more we can get cross racing in and kind of, multi-day regattas in, the better.
How are each team set in each heat? Like who's orchestrating that?
Part of the heats are set by the seating committee, and that was how you ended up at the sprints and the out at the, what do they call it now, the Pac-10, whatever that race now that they're calling it has become. They make a seating out of that, and that's how the heats are formulated. So you're seated by how you've done. That's why all these earlier races and the 2 championship races really matter on where you end up in the heats. And I think that's an enormous deal. And getting rid of the reps made it even more interesting, because now the heat has become this, I mean, it's a monster of a race. In the first day, half the crews are now designated to being 13 or below. So you better pay attention. I'm on the bubble. I'm number 12 right now. I think I'm 12 or 13, 12 if I remember right. And it's us and Stanford are going to be fighting for that 12-13 spot. And in the first race, one of us isn't going to be, well, maybe both of us, if we really don't do our jobs, could end up not being in the top 12. And that's a huge set. So the heat is enormous, and there's a whole seating committee that goes over this, and it's a big deal. Gary really works hard. Gary Caldwell and his group have worked pretty hard to make sure that this gets set up properly. And it's talked about a lot throughout the year. So, day one, it starts off with a bang this year, and I think it's a bigger bang than usual because we don't have the reps.
Yeah, Chip Davis from Rowing News here. Todd, that was going to be my question for you. If you look at these heats lineups, you're in the heat of death. That's the toughest one, as I see it. And how do you go back to Ithaca if that doesn't go well, and explain to your athletic director that your weekend was kind of shot at 8:40 a.m. on a Friday? Like, are you having second thoughts about getting rid of the reps? The semifinal of the IRA varsity event used to be the best race in all of rowing around the world. And now it's, you're following the NCAA program.
Yeah, I've always been a reps guy, so I wasn't really for this. I love the reps. I went through myself as an athlete and also I thought that this was, I mean, it is what it is, and they change it. So it's the rule, and that's what I'm going to follow. And I'm going to do the best that I can with my crew in it. But I love the rep. So now without the rep, it's how do I face my AD is I make sure that I do my job on day one. I'm going in there and I'll give you away. We're going to try really hard on day one. How's that? Our championship race for me really comes in on when you're seated 12th. You got to look at it as day one's the most important day for us. After that, if we get the win, or the third spot in that thing, and we end up in that top 12, we've already gotten our seed. So then anybody after that, it's bonus. And obviously as a coach, we're all going to try to go more than that, and we're greedy. So I'm going to try to be greedy and do my job. But the overall thing is right there. And if we lose, wow, you know how that is. Nobody likes losing. And in this case, now you're in the bottom 13, or the bottom 12, starting at 13th. So then I really have to go to work and try to get some kids to realize that there's still some races they can win, and they can salvage their pride and honor out of this, and try to go racing and still beat some people. So I think it's a really hard thing to do. And, it's a heck of a thing to have to face on day one, but I guess it comes at some point.
And then follow up, Wyatt, is it better to think you might not have 4 100ths as your margin this weekend?
Is it better to think that? Yeah. I mean, I will tell you that I've spent more time thinking about like where I can find those hundredths of a second. Do I take, this wiring out? Do I put a different skeg on? But I think, at the end of the day, I anticipate it's going to be very competitive, right? In our heat, we've got Syracuse, we've got Drexel, who we know well enough has been improving throughout the year and is a very dangerous crew. So, I anticipate very tight racing this weekend.
And you're not even mentioning Washington. So are all you guys going to bring your own geese? So you can get the automatic 7th spot if you bang a goose. That seemed to work at Worcester, but it didn't work for Texas at the NCAAs. Do you have plans for Canada geese at this regatta? No one's touching that.
Not taking the bait, Chip.
Switch to lower boats. We all focus on the varsity 8 is the heavyweight title fight, right? That's where the national championship is going to be decided. But you've got, twice as many competitors coming in the 4s. Is it bothersome, or is it just you're trying to give guys experiences that you have crews in the national championship race, and so the 5 athletes you put in that 4 are not your top 5 athletes, but they have to race against a number of schools who are bringing their top 5 athletes? Is that fair, or is that you just want to give your guys the best competition? Tell us, Al. We haven't heard from you.
All right, I'll hop in there, Chip. I think similarly to the other coaches on this, on this cast right now, this has been a tough week, right? Because we're all having to cut guys from the squad, right? Essentially, you're not racing. All of us have rode 5/8s or more through the spring season, so that's really challenging. So for the guys, we feel fortunate that we qualified as a team, and certainly that gives opportunity to not only our varsity, but our 2V, 3V, and the 4. We're trying to take advantage of all those opportunities, but I'm sure these other coaches will tell you too, like, it's a really hard choice when you have to tell a senior or any member of the team, like, hey, that was your last stroke of the year. I don't know if anyone was expecting it. So I think it means a little bit more, certainly. And we're just trying to do our best to put these guys in a position to succeed and improve. And ultimately, they train every day to race. So we're trying to give everyone the opportunity to get out there, as many as possible, to get out there and race.
There's certainly room in the schedule for more racing, just looking at hours of daylight. But of course, New Jersey gives us weather that makes it sometimes almost impossible to get the races in. I mean, last year it was wildfires. We're definitely dealing with a different climate today than maybe when all of us were collegiate oarsmen. Would you rather go somewhere else and bring your 5/8s? I mean, the Eastern Sprint seemed to be a real festival of heavyweight rowing with 6 varsity 8s. Todd, would you travel? Would you go even further than New Jersey to have a fuller squad, or Wyatt to have 6 8s? Would you spend more money?
I'll go wherever they tell me to go. If they want to go to Tacoma, I'll go to Tacoma. I think it was the coaches a while ago here we are, men's rowing still isn't an NCAA sport. So when the IRA was revamped, it was basically revamped on the coach's call. We had a chance there. We had umpteen years ago when we were rowers. What we have? There was the 3/8s, the varsity, the JV, the freshman. But then you had how many 4s? The open 4, the varsity 4, the freshman 4, the straight 4, and the pair. So we had the 5/8s rowing, and we got rid of it as coaches. And so we had that. We had it right in Syracuse, and we had it going into, I think, in New Jersey. It was in New Jersey, because when I was a lightweight coach, I'd fill the heavyweight ranks with lightweight JV guys quite often, in the straight 4 and the pair. I took that part for the heavyweights and the point stuff. So we had it, and we gave it up. That's our fault, and shame on us for I think, again, I'm old school. I'm the old speaker guy, and I thought the IRA was great the way it was. We changed it, so I live by the rules and I do the best I can with these rules. But so if we want to travel, sure, let's travel. But we had the 8s, and the question is, do we want to bring it back at some point? That would be a bigger question that we'd have to bring up to the IRA group, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, Todd. I'd be in favor of that. And I was thinking of that, Chip, when you were asking about the varsity 4. I was thinking back to the IRA, when I was racing in kind of the late 90s, early 2000s, and you'd see straight 4s and pairs and Cox 4s and open 4s and varsity 4s. And there were a lot of unknowns. And I think that's what's exciting about that event for our guys is they're going, you have a pretty good sense of the pecking order in the 1V, 2V, 3V. The 4 is totally up for grabs, right? And there's some really great racing and some fun stuff happening in that event. So I like the old IRA. I would go back to it in a heartbeat and certainly do whatever we needed to on our end to help that. But it is what it is, and it certainly feels like this time of year, taking care of 3 8s and a 4 is a lot as well. So, we do have our hands full for sure.
Al?
I hadn't really given it much thought, Chip, until you just brought this question up. But I certainly am never against an opportunity. So if the format changes and that's what it looks like in the future, we're going to field those events. We're going to get those athletes racing.
And Matt, you're kind of coming from it from outside the Eastern Sprint, so you have a different perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I think for us, our qualifier for the IRA is the Davales in there. There's events all the way down to the single, from the 8 all the way down to the single. And for us, some of the guys on our team get a really good opportunity to throw it down the pair and throw it down to the single. And, for them, that's a championship race. They get to get in the medal dock if they win. And it's just a really good development opportunity for some of the guys that maybe like walk-ons or new to the sport, or some guys that maybe came in a little bit slower to develop, get a championship race under the belt. And, in 2 or 3 years, maybe they are members of the varsity. So I feel like anytime you get a chance to, again, race more athletes, more development opportunities, more competition opportunities, the better.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chip. I got a question for Matt Weaver. We talked a little bit about Paul Savel's impact on Drexel rowing. What's it been like? You're the head coach of the program. He's took on the director of rowing. It's almost like Chris Clark and Bo Hoopman. They worked together for so many years, but Chris has taken over the director of rowing while Bo's taken over the head coach.
Definitely. Well, he's sitting right next to me. He told me to say that he's a big pain in the ass, and no, but he's been great to work with. He's provided a lot of mentorship and a lot of autonomy for me to obviously take over the program, but also pass down a lot of good institutional knowledge and some knowledge of the guys on the team that he recruited and developed for 4 or 5 years up to this point. So yeah, he's been great to work with. Obviously, an institution here in Philadelphia, and I think men's heavyweight rowing in general. So yeah, super grateful for the opportunity to get a chance to work alongside him and to get some mentorship from him as well.
It's great to hear. I guess next question for Al Monte. The Madeira Cup is one amazing race. And, you go against Cornell, you go against Todd, Kennett, and, Holy Cross and Oregon State. But what's it like to work with teams that are outside of the East Coast? You're working with Gabe, who has crews over in the West Coast. Some of those guys are from the West Coast. You got guys from the West Coast on your program, but what's it like to work with, teams that are not just in quote unquote your bubble, but outside of the region?
Yeah, it's really, really fun. Our sport is, it's not huge, right? So generally everyone knows each other in some form or fashion. And I give Todd and Brian Volpenheim, the previous head coach here at Penn, a lot of credit for kind of trailblazing that double dual situation. It's been great. It's been really fun.
And then the next question I got for Wyatt Allen, given the fact that Isaiah Harrison's coming to the program next year, I'm going from, being an only rower outside, in Idaho, and then going to be coming to your program next year as a freshman.
Well, we're excited to get him here. We feel lucky he's coming our way. I think Isaiah just by virtue of being a single sculler in Idaho, he had this reputation as sort of a lone wolf. And I think kind of watching him at CRC this year and watching him operate in a team setting and get to know people and get comfortable in a different environment has been awesome. It seemed like a really easy transition for him. He handled it really well. And every time I talk to him, he speaks to how excited he is to continue that at Dartmouth and be part of this team. So I don't anticipate it being a big transition for him. I think he's going to fit right in, and certainly we can find a place for his horsepower. I'm confident in that. So we're looking forward to it.
Awesome. And then I guess the question goes to all the coaches here. Right? Last question I have, and then we'll move on to our next group as well. We're at bring them in. Is there a reason why like all those lineups are hidden on like Regatta Central? Like they're not posted on until like the day of the race, so no one knows who's in certain boats. Do you know why that is? Or
I think there's actually an option when you put them in. You can either leave them hidden. I think the default is to leave them hidden, or you can make them visible. Am I correct on that, guys?
I think that sounds about right. I'll be honest. I have another. Sometimes we're still figuring them out.
Yeah.
Right. And the entries have to go in.
thank you for all these coaches on here. We're going to move into our next group right now. You're more than welcome to stay. If you'd like, we got some more press coming on as well, but some more teams to follow. So if you have to go, we understand that. But again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this and looking forward to next year with more of these press conferences as well. So you're more than welcome to stay. But if not, thank you so much.
Thanks, Hudson. Good luck to everybody. See some of you guys down there.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hudson.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, moving in here. So thank you everyone for joining us. This is our group 2 of the IRA press conference for this weekend. We have all these coaches here to join us. Thank you so much. We will be taking off to Lauren. Lauren will be explaining the next process and move on from there.
Hi. Each coach will just give a brief statement of their season so far and how they're looking for this weekend. And then after that, we can follow up with the questions from the press.
I had some close races and won some and lost some. It was, I thought, a pretty fun season all around. Like, had some good travel races and guys saw some new places. For this weekend, it would be just nice to kind of improve on what we've had over the season. So maybe getting on the top with some of those close races and kind of improving on some of those ones that we've had over the spring.
Thank you. We can go to Salle next.
Hey, yeah, so very, very successful season for us so far. Won some big races for us, some of the local cups, as well. Traveled a lot this year, provided some good experience for the guys. Had a good race against Oregon up at Pac-12 Invitational. That was fun. But yeah, very close racing against all kinds of competition. And we're very excited to showcase what we can do at IRAs.
Thank you, Coach. We can move on to Stetson next, if that's okay.
Thanks, Lauren. We had a roster of exactly 13 men this year. We had a successful outing at Head of the Charles in the Collegiate 4, where we won. In the spring, our pair and single medaled at Sierra and Dad Vales. The 8 has gotten better this spring compared to last spring, but just didn't have enough to qualify. So we're bringing the 4 to IRAs. It's almost identical to the 4 that raced at Charles. There's one rower that's different, but that's the way our springs look so far.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us on. Marist had a tough year, kind of regrowing still after COVID, and my first year being brought on full time with the program, and so that was a big deal for setting us up for the future, recruiting wise and things like that. But small group of upperclassmen. We had only 4 upperclassmen on the team with 3 8s. So a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores, a lot of novice athletes. So we're coming to the IRA with a 4. Our 2 senior oarsmen are in that 4, and then a freshman and a sophomore. Everything is just development for the future right now, but we're excited about the path we're on.
Our season so far has been really good. I think overall our enthusiasm hasn't wavered. Starting to get a little antsy for the weekend ahead, but it's a historic one for JU since it's the first time that our program has actually qualified varsity 8s through an AQ. So that's really exciting to nab the AQ at Sierra. It was an exciting final that weekend. And we're taking advantage of what we've been able to achieve. So looking forward to this weekend. We're taking 2 8s, a varsity 8 and a second varsity 8. Only a couple seniors mixed in there and a lot of sophomores and underclassmen as well. So it'll be really good for the future just to kind of have this springboard into the next several years with this kind of a result.
Thank you, Coach. And now we can move on to any questions. You can just direct it to whatever coach you want and they can answer for that. Fraser, you can start.
Thank you. Fraser Ennis, Junior Rowing News out of the UK. Coach Winkler, coming out of the Pac-12s, Oregon didn't get the automatic qualifier, and based on some of the polling, it looks like it was quite a close thing. How was the feeling in camp once you got that varsity 8 bids confirmed?
It was cool. There's some discussion about I guess on the at-large bids. Our cross racing, I think, was pretty successful in a way. Like, there's a reason why we flew out east to race in Ithaca against Penn, Holy Cross, and Cornell. That was a big race for us, and that result, I think, kind of put us in front of some others that might have been on the cusp also. So it was could have gone either way. And that race it was a high pressure situation. Like, we had to perform well. And I think we did enough to justify getting the bid. So the Pac-12s was not kind of what we wanted, our performance there. So it was a little bit iffy after that. But the guys are all real pumped to have the opportunity to, like I said before, to try to kind of improve on what those results were over the season.
All right. I have a question that actually goes right back to Gabe as well. So with the women's rowing going to the West Coast Conference for, I guess it's going to be Washington State and Oregon State, with the Pac-12 being pretty much gone, you guys are, last wolves, I guess you can say in there. What's the goal and plan for qualification regatta next year with the Pac-12 being done for men's rowing?
Well, we've been talking with the coaches the goal in a lot of our minds. It's not unanimous, I got to tell you this, but is to combine with the Western sprint schools to create essentially kind of a meaningful regatta, and to have that be kind of the Western sprints or the Western Conference Championships, hopefully next year, to do that. And whether the bids come from that or how many or what numbers that is kind of up for debate. That is still not finalized, meaning we have not agreed on how to have that happen. So at this moment, we don't really have a championship on the schedule for next spring at all. It could happen with three things could happen. We could probably combine with the other three Pac-12 schools, Cal, Washington, and Stanford, and essentially run kind of something similar that we have in the past. We could combine with the Western sprint schools to make like an 8-boat final race, or we could have nothing and we would have to just go off of our regular season stuff and in a sense be like an independent. I don't want to do that. I want to have a championship at the end of the year, and I would like to be able to put it on the line so there isn't too much debate and all that in the end.
Good to know. I think a lot of the press was wondering like how that's going to work out next year. I mean, even Frater,
we've all said we got to figure this out before August at latest. It's almost too late right now because we have to book the venues. We've got to get this going, and the majority of the coaches want it to be one race, meaning the West Coast Championships, which include like USD, UCSD, Gonzaga, Santa Clara, with Cal, Washington, and Oregon State, to make a good kind of marketable regatta. But I cannot speak for any of those other coaches. That's what I want. That's what I would love to see. I would love to see like a heats and finals of something in a day that could essentially rival the Eastern sprints. And so if people are watching on the East Coast, the Eastern sprints finals, tune into the West Coast finals an hour later. That'd be cool.
Great idea. I like that a lot, Gabe. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks.
So I guess the next question here I got personally is for Preston over at Jacksonville. You were talking about earlier the automatic qualification for the IRA. What was the training plan or process going into that to prepare your guys for that big race? Because it was I don't know if you guys knew 100% or you could tell if it was going to be like the IRA was going to be a possibility. Just wanted to know where your head was at before that race.
No, that's a good question because it's been years in the making to get us to the point where we were competitive for the AQ at Sierra. It's been taking a while and just kind of years and years and building upon the success and the training that we've been doing year after year. We have a unique situation where we've got a really long winter break. So when the athletes come back from that, 7-week winter break, they've got to be ready to go. And regardless of whether they're ready, the training plan goes forward. And I think our guys really rose to the occasion during the months of January and February to make things work and to commit to that training plan. Yeah, it was successful because they bought into it, and it was successful because we kind of pushed the limit of where we wanted to go. And so even though we were going somewhere new and we were going, training a lot more than usual, we kind of had to really be humble and aware that other teams were gunning for it as well. So we had to put it all together and really make it happen on that weekend. I was a nervous wreck that whole week because you go for 4 months and you hope that you can make it work.
For Evo over at LaSalle, how are you commanding this crew this year?
The team has improved a lot in every aspect, from attitude to just speed to grades. I think we've made a huge step up this year. Unfortunately for us, so did Drexel. And I think so did the whole Philly group. If you look at Penn now being 7th in a country, us and Drexel being up there with, I think we can fight competitively now with those top 15 level teams, which in the past, we would hope that we can, but we'd always kind of get the short end of the stick there. But I think overall, the whole Philly group is going up. I think we're following that, and hopefully we're the ones pushing that floor up, pushing the speed up in Philly. So that's exciting to see. But yeah, the team overall, I think I'm so proud of the guys. The whole work we did this year on every front has been fantastic, and we had our best season yet. And I keep saying this every year, and it just, hopefully we can keep that rolling and going into the future.
Looking a little beyond IRAs and with my British cap somewhat, obviously Coach Krakic has already announced their fundraiser to try and make the trip across the Atlantic for Henley Royal Regatta. But are any of the rest of you planning to make the trip, either recruiting wise or with some athletes in tow?
Not us, but I've always stated, if we were going to go, you're going to want to be pretty successful. You don't want to go there and just be bumped out on the first day, because it's kind of a big trip. I have always stated, we get into that, we get top 12, we should definitely fundraise to do it. Something like that, because that's kind of the level that you're going to need to be at least to have a fun, good, successful trips. But we're not going this year. It's something that is always on the horizon. I didn't know LaSalle, so you guys are going to go? You guys are in?
Yeah, we're
That's cool.
Fundraising is done, so we're now waiting. We're definitely going. We're either going to have to qualify on the 28th or we're going to get into the main event, but hopefully we're in.
So meaning they have to do a time trial or something like that?
Yeah, if we don't get the automatic bid, they'll have to do a time trial on Friday before.
Yeah, you'll get in there.
Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Marist will not be attending with the team, but we will have a coach there recruiting who will be hanging out with, he does some work with the Winter Park women's rowing team, the high school team. It is definitely on the horizon for our program to go in the future. Similar to what Gabe said, you want to go in a year that's going to be a fast year. And so, part of that journey or that conversation right now is putting out some pretty serious goals, both on the erg and on the water, performance-wise, that we want to see. But the school is on board, the alumni are on board, the funding is in the tank. We need the athletes and the coaches to step up and deliver the right crew, and then we'll go.
Our summer will involve recruiting domestically in person and then hosting summer camp. But no, we will not be going to Henley.
The Jacksonville men will not be going, but our women actually have been slated to go to the women's regatta.
I guess last question I personally have for the IRA is and again, the question that I had for the first group was about if there's going to be any larger races. We see a lot of dual races throughout the season, in the regular season for the men's rowing side of things. And, women's rowing, they have more of these invites where there are much more teams coming to larger races. It could be a 6-lane race. Do you guys have any thoughts of making and having more of those larger races throughout the regular season? Just wanted to know if you guys had thought about that or any discussion.
So we had our little Dexter invite, and it had Gonzaga, Santa Clara, UCSD, all in one shot, which was cool. But I do like kind of what you were saying, the Pac-12 Challenge. It is the dual formats, but it's 3 huge races in a weekend and all back to back. I think that's a pretty exciting weekend to watch. the 6-lane boat across 6 lanes across all side by side at one race is the best, I do think. But it's like, I am, when you're traveling so far, to race at least more than once does make it worth your while. So you can, and to kind of mix up the racing a little bit, like, well, when you do the dual format. So we're definitely going to be pushing that. We're going to always, like, that gets down to the line of the Pac-12, what's going on. We're going to have the same schedule next year. You know, that Pac-12 challenge is going to exist. That Las Vegas invite, whether it is in Las Vegas or not, is up to debate. But like, same thing. Like, we're going to have the same racing schedule that we're next year, and I hope to bring up maybe some more teams for the Dexter invite.
I oversee both our men and our women's programs, so I'm always trying to plan logistics so that they're both in the same place at the same time, or they're not in two different places at the same time. And so with the IRA Invitational, that's been fun to watch, but I'm not sure Stetson's getting an invite this year. The Florida State Championship is likely not going to happen at that same venue on that same weekend. And I actually pulled the men out of that race for this year because we end up racing everybody we've already raced again. And I felt like we could get more out of being home that weekend with the men's team. There have been some conversations with some Florida programs and some West Coast programs to kind of come up with a multi-year schedule where a couple of Florida schools head to the West Coast one year together and share some expenses amongst all 4 teams. And then the following year, the West Coast schools come down to Florida and do the same thing. Getting creative and looking for different opportunities to be able to see some different crews and give the athletes some different experiences, I think is a positive. We get a lot of teams that come to us for winter training. And so we try to take those opportunities to do a lot of side-by-side racing, which is helpful as well.
All right, perfect. And then any thoughts from Salle before we hand it over to Fraser?
Yeah, I mean, we're very lucky to be in Philly. We race a lot. Some coach already mentioned Connect Cup, Kirk Cup, Bergen Cup, race Deadvales. So we see a lot of 6 across, 4 across racing. We'd love to see more duels, but we can always schedule those with local competition. So for us, it's pretty good. And I'm a fan of racing. You know, I think we all do this to race. You know, we put in hours to race and see and compete. So I think that's always a positive, and always happy to race anyone. So if anybody wants to come up to Philly or wants us to come down, let me know and we'll make it happen. So
thank you. And then now, Fraser, do you have a question?
To Marist and Stetson, racing your top 5 athletes in the 4s, and measuring them up against, in some cases, athletes, what will it be? Maths. Sort of 20 through 24 from some of the other teams, or whatever the number is in reality. How do you evaluate that and measure your chances against potentially taking some large scalps?
I think there's always going to be somebody out there faster than you, and we can justify that our top 5 athletes are racing somebody else's middle 5 athletes or bottom 5 athletes. But every coach gets to choose who they put on the line, and our job is to do the best performance that we can put together for whoever shows up.
Yeah, I think the 4 category, like what you just described, is part of what makes the 4 such a fun event. And I was listening in on the previous round of coaches, and they were talking about the old IRA and the way the IRA used to be run, and there were all sorts of different 4s and pairs and a lot more opportunities for different levels of athletes. And some of our competitors in Division 1 are not development teams. They're elite or even Olympic level teams. And so that's okay. That's part of the game that we play. I think it's exciting for our athletes, our top 4, to be able to go and race, the 3rd string or 4th string athletes at a school who are at that elite level. I think for a program like Marist, the years that we go in the 8, you're always striving to be, maybe we'll make the 3rd final this year, or maybe we could do something really amazing or special and take a run at getting into a petite final, but you kind of go into that race knowing that you're not going to win it. And when you're in the 4, I think it's anybody's game. The idea that you could win that event becomes more real, and there's a certain level of competition and intensity that comes with that, and the way you train for that. So I think it's cool.
Those are all my questions. Coaches, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited for this weekend. It's going to be a 3-day format, heat semifinals and finals. Looking forward to seeing how it all pans out. For those of you watching the press conference, it will be streamed on overnight. Any links to watch the races, you can find those on our personal social media, 4 Stars Podcast. We'll be posting all the links to that, and I'm sure other media sources as well would be posting the links for that. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.